there's my extra seat. Here's your extra seat. Oh, take it. Now you're reverse face.
Don't leave without me. Excuse me.
Alright.
I'm not here blocking me.
Rafa, you have this whole window to yourself.
I know, but I don't want to look behind me.
Here, Lady Rocky.
Sit on this.
Oh, that's so nice of you. Rafa, this very nice man is offering you the window next to him. Okay?
Well, you can't go very far anyway. We're all hemmed in here. I thought you were going to leave without me. That would have been a very interesting tour. It might have been an improvement, who knows, you know. But here's Captain Mark. Let's hear for Captain Mark. He's going to get us around the city. He's a great athlete. He is. In spite of his advanced age, he's a member of the Slovakian ski team.
What?
Or is it Slovenian? Or Slavonian? I can't remember. It's one of those. Anyway. But you know, I always worry when there's illegal seafood so close to the aquarium. Like if they don't make it at the aquarium, do they end up over here? I don't know. But I'm Von Trivia. I'm Professor Von Trivia. Von Trivia. They call me Von. And I'm from Quackovia. Do you know Quackovia? Tiny, tiny little country, Quackovia. It's the nice People's Republic of Quackovia. But I'm the chairman of the Department of Trivial Studies at the University of Glockenspiel. I'm a THD. I'm a doctor of trivia. Triviologist. But I went to Harvard on a tour, not to study, it was a tour. They threw me out. They said, we don't do trivia. We're Harvard, you know. Take a duck tour. So I took the duck tour. They were very nice. They said, where are you from? I said, I'm from Quackovia. So we're gonna quack, right? That's what you do on a duck, you quack. When in Rome, do as the Romans. When in Quackovia, do as the Quackovians. So when I say my name, when I say Von Trivia like that, right? Everybody go quack, quack. You got it? Write it down if you have to. Quack, quack. Okay. So let's try one. You ready? Von Trivia.
Quack, quack.
Oh, that was a little tired, I thought. Let's try one more. Okay, Von Trivia.
Quack, quack.
Okay, that's fine. That's a little better. So here we go into the city. It got warm, didn't it? It really did get warm.
But I can't see.
If we could have our little friend sit down in the back, if that would be okay. There we go, that's better. So, this is the Long Wharf Marriott over here. It's on Long Wharf, obviously. The aquarium is on Central Wharf. But you know, Long Wharf really should be called not as long as it used to be Wharf. Because it goes down to the counting house, down to the chart house. That used to be John Hancock's counting house. He was one of the richest men in America. And it was 500 yards at one time, Long Wharf. That's like a third of a mile. You know, it's like 1,500 feet. They could put 30 tall ships along Long Wharf at the same time. But State Street used to be called King Street. You know, back when we had a king, it was called King Street. We're going to go up State Street. Atlantic Avenue used to be called the Atlantic Ocean. This was all Boston Harbor. All of this was water. The harbor used to be twice as big as it is today. Can you imagine? It was twice as large. It extended almost to the old State House. Not quite, but almost to the old State House up ahead there. The Charles River in 1800 was 10,000 feet wide at its widest point. Today it's like 2,000 feet, you know. Landfill's not sexy, I understand, but it's very important to Boston's history. It really is. The original Shawmut Peninsula, you know, where the Puritans came in 1630, it was this little peninsula, 600 acres. It was very small. So they had to make it bigger, so they filled in the harbor. Boston Harbor was twice as big at one time. They filled in, you know, the river. It's an amazing thing. We'll talk about other stuff. Sometimes the captain calls me Ludwig von Landfill. I get carried away. But we'll talk about other stuff like the Revolution and the Civil War, Dunkin' Donuts, all the important stuff. Oh, there's Lionel the Lamplighter. There we go. Hello. Hello. Why are they letting us go first? Are they broken down or something? I don't know. It's gonna let you be the vanguard there, Captain, huh? The Customs House on the left, when they built that, you know, around 1845, that was on the water. That was the water line at that point. Ships would come up to the customs house, they would pay their duty, you know, unload them, bring everything to the marketplace. Quincy Market's right on the right over here. But this was all water. I'll show you the marker of how far the harbor went at one time. There's our first Dunkin' Donuts on the left over there. I told you we talk about the important stuff here. 122 Dunkin' Donuts in the city of Boston. I think we're going to see about 10. I used to say 12. You know, I used to say a dozen. It was like a joke, a dozen donuts. A woman started counting. She said there weren't a dozen, there were only 10. I said I ate 2 of them. But there's the water line right there. That's how far the harbor came originally. All the way up to there. The old State House straight ahead was built in 1713. It was the seat of the British government. The British called it the Town House. The lion up on top is for England, the unicorn's for Scotland. Symbols of the British monarchy. From the balcony, that's where the Declaration of Independence was first read to the people of Boston. July the 18th, 1776. It took 2 weeks to get it here by horseback. They had to wait 2 weeks to hear what it had to say. Nowadays, they post a link. I'd say for a PDF of the Declaration, click on this link, we'd have it right away. But you're not as dramatic as having somebody read it from a balcony, you know. But in front of the old State House, that's where the Boston Massacre took place, the first violence of the Revolutionary period. 8 British soldiers were accused of killing 5 Americans. So they were arrested, they were put in jail up on this corner. This is where the old jail used to be, on Queen Street. Court Street used to be Queen Street. They were accused of murder, so they were put on trial, an American jury. And an American jury found them not guilty of murder, so they acted in self-defense. So we call it the Boston Massacre. You know, that's the American name. Our British friends call it the Incident on King Street. Whole different take on things, you know. But Queen Street, very historic. Benjamin Franklin's brother had a print shop on Queen Street at one time. The tea kettle on the right, that used to be the Oriental Tea Company. Except we throw all the tea in the harbor, so now it's a Starbucks. King's Chapel down on the left. Very historic. First major granite building in the city. You know, the king wanted a church because his officials weren't Puritans. They were Anglican, the Church of England. But nobody would sell him any land, so he took part of the graveyard. That's the oldest graveyard in the city of Boston, right over there. That's where a lot of the founders are. Governor Winthrop is buried there. He took part of the graveyard. He built a wooden church in 1686. The stone church around 1750. Has a bell by Paul Revere, King's Chapel. You know, not unusual. Paul Revere cast a lot of bells. He had 16 kids to support, so he kept busy, you know. But he said the bell at King's Chapel was the sweetest bell he ever cast. The bell at King's Chapel. After the Revolution, it became the first Unitarian church in the United States. Here's the Parker House on the left. The oldest restaurant, the oldest hotel rather, in the United States. Ho Chi Minh worked in the kitchen there.
What?
Malcolm X was a busboy.
No, I don't believe
One heck of a human resources department at the Parker House, I think. That's where they invented my favorite. Boston cream pie was invented at the Parker House. It's really a cake, but they call it a pie. There you are. Let's give her a quack, okay? Von Trivia.
Quack, quack.
There we go. But JFK had his bachelor party at the Parker House. He and Jackie used to go there pretty often. There were stories that that's where he proposed, but he probably proposed down in Florida, as far as we know. But John Wilkes Booth came to the Parker House. You know, the guy who shot President Lincoln. He came to visit his brother in 1865, just before he shot Lincoln. His brother was appearing next door at the Tremont Theater. It's a church now, but it used to be a theater. And I think he was doing Hamlet. So John Wilkes Booth came to see his brother, then he went down to Washington and he shot the president, sadly. But the Tremont Temple, when it became a church, it was the first fully integrated church in America. Here's the Granary Burial Ground on the right, very historic. Sam Adams in the front row. the great patriot Sam Adams. He's near the 5 victims of the Boston Massacre. He thought they were the first martyrs of the Revolution, so he asked to be buried next to them. Across the street's the Beantown Pub. Beantown Pub is the only place in the world where you can drink a cold Sam Adams and look at a cold Sam Adams at the same time. You can't do that anywhere else on the planet except right there. Paul Revere's in the back, the Midnight Rider Paul Revere.
So many more.
With his 2 wives, he had 16 kids altogether. 16 kids. Not at the 2 wives, not at the same time. 8 by the first wife, and then 8 from the second wife. So he was busy. He was a bell caster. He was a bell ringer. He was a silversmith, coppersmith, goldsmith. He was an engraver. He was an amateur dentist, which is words you don't usually put together. And he was also a coroner, because they use the teeth, their dental records, to try to figure out who the people were. So he was busy, and he was in all the big events at the Revolutionary period. On trivia!
Quack, quack.
So he's in the back, by the wall over here on the right, the big monument where those people are, that's John Hancock. Big monument, big handwriting. Remember, he had the really big handwriting, John Hancock. He was the president of the Continental Congress and first man to sign the Declaration of Independence. When he signed it, he said, "Let King George see my signature without using his spectacles." Pretty brave. They were all brave, their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, all on the line. The